Hey guys, welcome to the show.
Thank you for joining us, tuning in. We hope you're having a wonderful day wherever you are hearing our voices in your ears from. It's always a bizarre thing to think about for me that, like, at this point, millions of people
Are hearing you?
have heard us.
Yes.
And it's awesome. And we appreciate all of our listeners so much. And we're just along for the ride with you guys, getting this relationship information and advice and applying it to our marriage and, the struggles that
the struggles are real.
They are real. Our relationship is not perfect. We argue about silly things, and then I'm like, what are we doing?
What are we arguing about?
Why do I feel like so stressed out? And it's really not a big deal, but it's hard. And being a human can be hard. And in a relationship with another human makes it tricky.
You know what I was thinking? I was wondering if you guys, the listeners, if you guys can tell when we've been fighting recently. Like, because I feel like recently, we got back from Florida and we've been arguing more than normal, and it just so happens to be the week that we're recording episodes. So I'm just wondering if it's like, if we're transparent when it comes to that, if you guys can tell.
Sarah and Stella were gone for 2 weeks, and then when they came back, I, in particular, it was just really hard. Stella was sick, and I'd had 2 weeks of just like doing what I want when I wanted, no one telling me what to do, no 3-year-old whining. And when they came back, it was like, the best way to describe it would be like a culture shock. It was like, oh man. And Sarah and I were butting heads. I think the fact that Stella was really sick had a lot to do with it. We weren't sleeping. And it's important to remember that if you're arguing or having a rough patch in your relationship, a lot of times, like, think about the other stuff. Definitely there might be underlying issues in the relationship for sure, but like, are you getting enough sleep? Are you hungry? Are you taking care of your body? Are you exercising? Are you eating well? I mean, those are all things to consider, and certainly having a toddler will put that stress. So anyways, it's been, we're here, they've been back now for about 2 weeks, and I think we're still trying to like get back into a good rhythm. We moved places. So we're just sharing this because, one, our relationship is not perfect, and I don't think there are any that exist. If someone claims that, good on them, but it takes work. And,
it does.
And at one point in that, quote, perfect relationship, it may not have been that way. And anyways, we are happy to have you guys along for the ride. And today's topic is one that has been requested by a few listeners and is a bit of a serious one. I guess they're all kind of serious, but that is dealing with the death of a partner. And this can apply to certainly, obviously, if you've experienced that directly in your life, but even if you have not, unfortunately, it is a reality of our lives that at one point our partner is going to pass away, or you're going to pass away and your partner is still going to be living. And so this is an episode that applies to everyone. And there's a lot of gems where you can think about the conversation you can have with your partner now, if you guys are both together, upon the event of either one of your deaths. And that can be a very positive, uplifting conversation, an important one to have.
And really, to build on what Chase is saying, the reason we brought Sarah on is because she does have a lot of knowledge in bereavement counseling, but also because you guys were requesting to get advice for dating after the death of a spouse, because it can be so different than dating when you've decided to have a divorce. It's really a completely different spectrum. So Sarah was brought on to talk about that because she does have so much experience with grief counseling, couples counseling in general. And she was just a perfect fit for this topic.
Why don't you tell the listeners
a little bit about her?
Sarah.
Well, she is an Aussie. She's got that lovely accent. And she has, in addition to being a couples and marriage therapist, she is also what we call here in the States, an officiant. So she brings people together. She's also been a grief and bereavement counselor for many, many years. So she has a lot of experience.
Yeah. So a lot of great stuff. And again, it's a bit of a downer, obviously, talking about this kind of stuff, but in the end, it can give you an appreciation for the life that you have if you're currently with your partner, and it can be really positive. And if you have experienced the death of a partner, we can't imagine, and it's got to be incredibly hard. And Sarah has some great advice for how to move forward and deal with that independently, and then as you move forward and look to love again, how to navigate that. So we are there for you. Sarah is there for you.
Yep, our hearts are with you.
And hope you enjoy and find some value in today's show.
Hi, Sarah. Thanks so much for joining us on the show today.
My absolute pleasure. Thank you.
Sarah, we've given our listeners a little information about yourself. We like to start the show with having you tell us and our listeners why you enjoy helping people improve their relationships.
Oh, well, I'm sure as many of your guests would have articulated before, I also believe that our relationships are the most important aspect of our lives, and they really contribute hugely to our wellness and the degree of experience that we can have in life and the legacy that we leave. My personal journey in my relationships, and as you would have heard with my bio, I do a range of different things, from being a marriage celebrant to being a love and relationship coach and a marriage therapist. And I also work at end of life. The degree of relationship skill that I see in those areas of people's big life milestones varies extraordinarily. And I see also that where we have poor relationship skill and relationship experience, those big milestones of our life, like relationship, love, family, children, and our wellness, really suffer. And I don't want people to suffer in their relationships. I think it's where we can really thrive and gift back to the world something beautiful. If we can get our relationships right, then we might just get this world right.
We love it, and we agree. It is such an important part of what it means to be human, and I think it's not paid attention to nearly enough, and that's why we love interviewing people like yourselves to get the tools that Sarah and I can use and share them with our listeners. And today's topic is going to be one that really hits home with a lot of people, and whether or not you've experienced it, like we mentioned in the pre-show, it's inevitable, and that is the death of our partner, or it's going to be ourselves, and our partner is going to have to deal with that. So why don't we jump right in and talk about how we can navigate this fact of life?
Well, any end of a relationship is kind of like a death, isn't it? We grieve. We grieve at the end of something. That's what grief is about. It's about knowing that something that you've had, you won't have again. And so any end of a relationship, whether it's a breakup, whether it's a divorce, or it can be ended without choice by death. We face grief in some way, and we work through grief. And when it is the circumstances of a death causing the end of a relationship, what I do find is it's an incredibly complex and amplified sense of relationship ending and grieving and personal repair that needs to take place before you can move into another relationship. And it's very individual, isn't it? It depends on so many things. It depends on the nature of the death, the nature of the relationship that has been ended by that death. Was it a good one? Was it a, not so great one anyhow? The age of the person who has been left behind, in the phase of life they're in. Are they young without children? Are they young with children? Have they got adult age children or no children? It then creates a very complex situation to work through beyond what is the natural, I suppose, pathways of acceptance, ending of a relationship, completing that, and reorganizing yourself individually to be ready again. It's a very, very amplified, highly charged and accentuated journey.
What would you say the biggest difference is from dating after a regular divorce versus dating again after the death of a spouse?
Well, I think the most significant difference there is that only one aspect of the relationship has ended with a death, and that's simply the physical relationship, the physical presence of someone. And so when you enter a relationship with a divorce or a breakup, there's a real clear rupture of that sort of field of relationship and a reorganizing of each of the parties into their individuated forms, and they go off and they make new agreements and relationships with other people, and they make an agreement with each other that this one has ended. Whereas with a death, there's been no agreement there. There's been no agreement to end that relationship. And in many ways, the very legitimate pathway of coping and adapting into grief is what I often talk to my clients about is entering into new relationship with your loved one who has died. And that's healthy in a grieving methodology. But when it comes to maybe when you're ready to re-partner and date, that makes things very tricky because you're still in a relationship with them. The word widower defines someone as being in a relationship with a dead person, doesn't it? It's still your husband. He's just died,
right.
Or it's not like your ex-husband. And so what we have there that complicates this is that there's still a sense of relationship. There's a sense of relationship going on, and particularly if you so that the fact that they're not physically present, you might still be living in the house that you shared together. You might still be raising the kids that you've had together. Their presence might be all through that house with their things still and pictures of your life and photos, and they still could have a very strong presence. And so when it comes to dating again or really consciously deciding that you're ready to re-partner, in many ways you'll almost go through the true death of that relationship. You go through a death again, and it's of the relationship. The relationship needs to be re-articulated and defined in a different way again, and this one's by a conscious choosing, and that's a great wrench for many people.
Yeah, it seems like there is a lot that goes into dating after the death of a spouse, not only from the person who has lost the partner and dealing with all those emotions, but then also the new partner that's coming into the picture of the new family and the kids and the wife who has lost somebody. So in regards to that dynamic, how would you recommend somebody who is joining a family, how would they, I guess, go through the process of joining that family smoothly without stepping on anyone's toes or making it not as complicated, I guess you could say?
Yeah, look, I think there'll always be crunchy moments where you do step on toes. It's the way you're feeling into what the boundaries are and how you navigate that world. I think the best approach is to be really frank and honest about what each of you or each of the members of family are feeling at each stage as things change and adapt into new models of family and partnerships, and being ready to just talk about things when you know something just doesn't feel right, or you're just getting a sense or a vibe of, oh, hang on a second, it's just, we're getting a bit weirded out here. This is not flowing right. So being able to bring things up and talk about them, which takes a high skill of conscious communication and speaking about your feelings and what you need and what's going on. One of my very dear friends, she lost her real beloved soulmate in her mid to late 20s, and then repartnered later and began a family with another man, so she didn't have a family at that time. And I know her partner very well as well, and he says, I don't even try to compete with a dead man. You can't look at it as a competition or a comparison. It's about really creating anew something for the two of you as well. So it brings a lot of skills into the relationship where you're consciously creating it. How would we like to be in this relationship together? How do we want to articulate it? How do we integrate the fact that there has been a previous marriage or a previous partner that still I love and will kind of be there in this marriage with us sometimes, so it's about talking about that. And I think the invitation in creating a new relationship where one of the parties has experienced a death as the ending of their previous relationship is to bring a sense of wonder and discovery and curiosity for yourself and for each other about how you can evolve into you with this person. What are they going to bring to your life and to who you are when you interact with them that is new and delightful and evolves and grows you.
So how can a partner keep the memory of their deceased partner alive in a healthy way? Because I can imagine that's like a big part of the balance, right? Is like not just totally forgetting your partner and just trying to like block off that memory of them, but then also not being so grieved by the loss or reliving the relationship. How can someone navigate that?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And again, every coupling will determine sort of the right, I suppose, balance and degree of penetration that deceased person kind of occupies in the family and in the relationship, because they kind of will sort of in many ways always be there. Like, love love remains, even when someone passes, the love remains. And if you have children as well, there's going to be a very clear sense of that that deceased parent still being active in communication and present at big milestone moments, and would be talked about. And I suppose it brings a greater level of maturity to be able to integrate that. So still speaking about them, having their photos in the house. It depends on how many. Maybe you probably don't have that picture of that person beside your bedside anymore if you're occupying a bed with another person. But it is a very, I suppose, explicit negotiation or articulation that eventually takes place. And it's one that, again, with that other answer I gave, you sometimes don't know it's a problem until it's a problem. You just really don't know what you're going to encounter as the unfoldment of toggling between continuing to process grief and the rearticulation of a relationship with someone deceased and creating a relationship with someone new. You're going to kind of maybe not know what you don't know until you arrive at, and sometimes when you arrive at it, it's at a bit of a crunchy, awkward moment that maybe can often catch you by surprise. So it's, again, I find that when I am working with couples who have this as part of their couple story and narrative, they develop a very strong communication style together, speaking about their needs and wants, and they become very fluent negotiators and looking at each other's needs and being very sensitive to them. So you're always going to be in relationship with your deceased beloved, previous beloved, but it takes a lot of skill, and the passage of time as well dictates changes. There's a slow, constant evolution, kind of like the movement of a glacier. That level of just real gentle rolling on in life, and each year and each sort of bit of extra distance between the death and the new relationship, it starts to tilt the balance differently as time goes on, and so it's a matter of adaptation and adjusting as things take on a different sort of environment.
I can imagine that at the time when the conversation arises where, well, I'll use a mom in this situation, and she's lost her husband, the wife has lost her husband, and they have children, and the time comes where she is ready to start dating, but now she has to explain to her children or let them know that she's going to start dating. I imagine that conversation can be very hard to have with children. Do you have any advice for any parents in that situation of how to go about initiating and having those conversations with your children? But first, we want to tell you about today's sponsors. Today's episode is brought to you by Modern Fertility. When and if to start a family is a very personal decision. Some women want kids now, others want kids in 10 years, or like Chase and me, we're unsure if we want a second kid. We have all the tools to prevent pregnancy, but we need more information to help us plan for it, even if kiddos are in the far, far future. No matter what your plan, the one simple step you should consider taking today is an at-home hormone fertility test from Modern Fertility. I just completed the fertility quiz and timeline tool offered on their website, and it's made me really realize that if Chase and I want to have more kids, we really need to start planning, especially since infertility with the second kid is actually more common than infertility with the first kid. Modern Fertility gives you access to the information you need to help plan ahead. Modern Fertility ships your kit to your home for just $159, and you get physician-reviewed results in just a few days. Those same tests cost over $1,000 at a doctor's office. The test can tell you if you have more or less eggs than average, what to expect from IVF or egg freezing, how your hormones relate to polycystic ovary syndrome, which 1 in 10 women have, and about your general hormone health. Modern Fertility gives you knowledge and information you need to make the best decision. I think one of the most incredible resources Modern Fertility offers is that you can connect directly with a fertility nurse to get all your questions answered. Plus, they have weekly webinars and an active online community with women just like us. Take the fertility quiz and get $20 off your first kit at modernfertility.com/ido. Take the fertility quiz and get $20 off your first kit at modernfertility.com/ido.
Yes. The age of the children will determine sort of at what level of disclosure you offer up at the beginning and as you go on. But it's not that hugely different to if you were, had a divorce and in time, parents repartner and introduce new people into the family environment. There's all those issues about boundaries and agreements between, the partner who's the new partner that's coming into that family environment. This is not your new dad. It is my partner and, my boyfriend, my husband or whatever. It's not that a replacement to your father who's died. It is another man in our family unit whom is here to give you support and journey with us and be witness to your growth as children. It's the same with partners coming in after divorce and having to negotiate those agreements around parenting, like the biological parent of those children still needs to, I suppose, take the lead and communicate to the children, just the usual boundaries that parenting require us to do, and the new partner that's come in offers support, but certainly I would suggest to that person if they're coming in that they don't overextend themselves into just trying to take the place of their parent who has left. That will really probably not go down incredibly well. And I think there's an opportunity for that new person entering into the family unit to talk to the children about their dad. Say if it's a male partner coming in to kind of be enrolled in the conversations to kind of keep their presence of their deceased father alive and honoured and respected and understood that he's still part of their lives. Any attempt to kind of conscious or unconsciously erase that father's presence in time I think would create something very difficult to deal with. But yeah, it's an amplification of every skill that I teach my couples in healthy, high-thriving relationships. It's an amplification of all of those. You're doing those at a really elite level. Good communication, good empathy, looking at needs and desires of not only your partner, but, being very attuned into the family and the children and noticing as they go through different stages of their grieving, what do they need next? I find with children in particular, they don't really understand the permanency of death. They don't really get it And as they reach different milestones, move into early adolescence, later adolescence, and moving into young adulthood, sometimes their grief at the loss of a parent can intensify rather than gentle when they start to just be hit with the reality of just exactly what they've lost. They don't know what they've lost until they kind of feel that loss at those big life moments of their growing up. So it's a very delicate but also a very rich space for people to enter into, very whole and fulfilling and profound relationship.
So someone that's dealing with the grief from the loss of a partner, I do not know all the stages of grief offhand, but I know it starts with denial, ends with acceptance, and there's a few in between. Where along that spectrum?
Anger, bargaining, shock.
There we go.
Stages. They don't happen in stages.
So in particular, are there any, as far as quote, moving on, let's just call it that for lack of a better term, but like going on to date other people, what do you find in working with people, the best approach to that, or the thought process that someone can go through before they choose to start dating again?
Yeah, good question, Chase. And again, it's not dissimilar to any other process I would guide and partner someone through in their grieving experience. Let me talk just briefly about when someone dies. What happens even if it's an expected death or if it's an unexpected death? We go into that first stage, which is shock. We go into shock, and it's an incredibly deep and physical and semi-permanent state our body gets thrown into. That sort of fight, flight, freeze, stress response that gets activated when we're under stress and then kind of calms down once the stress has disappeared, is with a death we get so shocked out of our body in many ways. It can take months, literally months, 3 months, sometimes 6 months for us to reorganize our internal physical system out of shock. There's a massive shock wave that goes through our body when someone that we love dies that takes a long time to work its way out. Just that physical thing, that fight, flight, freeze becomes our default kind of setting rather than our one that's activated when something triggers it. And what happens with that sort of polarity shift completely is that we then have to make very conscious actions to take our body back out of sympathetic nervous system, which is that stress response, and bring ourselves back into heal and repair, which is parasympathetic. So in those first stages of grief, and anytime grief gets re-triggered, we go into shock. So what happens is, in a grieving and bereavement journey, is slowly tilting our body back out of shock and into coherence again. And, if you don't sort of make a conscious and deliberate choice to address yourself in that sort of self-caring way, our shock can stay and linger with us and become almost like post-traumatic stress. We carry that shock and stress of a death like a very present trauma always with us. What we do in a grieving and bereavement journey is we do conscious and deliberate work to transform that into post-traumatic growth. We grow through it. You're right, Chase. You don't get over it. You grow through it. So that toggle between post-traumatic stress and post-traumatic growth is really that toggle between staying in the loss and the grief or really feeling the pull of life tugging at you again, the pull of light and love tugging at you again. And we do have our human spirit, given half the chance, will always lean towards the light. It will lean and reach out to life again. And so with someone working through their grief and bereavement, and then also arriving eventually at a point when they're ready to bring someone else into their life again, it's really where the balance of that threshold really tilts towards life and growth again. And what I find, which is very, very hard for people who are working through the death of a partner, is what's happened to them in a really accentuated way is that they've lost their divine mirror. You guys are in a beautiful relationship. When you're in a really healthy, beautiful, and deep and long love, that your partner, your beloved, is your divine mirror. They see you, they affirm you, they, in that kind of interaction and intersection of you and them, you become who you are through being in relationship with someone. And when that's ripped away from you, when you lose your beloved, you lose that divine mirror. You kind of absolutely lose that sense of who am I? Who am I? When I don't have this partner affirming me and to bounce off with, and to, we've got so much shared history that's gone as well. And so the task for the alive and remaining partner is to recreate their sense of me. In my relationship mentoring and love coaching approach, I have what I call the A game, which is a bunch of A's that describe our beliefs, our values, our behaviours that we do in relationship. And one of the very important A's is being your authentic me. And it's very hard for someone in grief after a partnership to find that person for a while. They really have to recreate and reimagine and reassemble that person together again. And so when someone is ready to invite a new partner and a new relationship into their life, it's really when they have done that task of moving into post-traumatic growth, where you're really reaching out towards the light and the life and the love again, more than you dipping into the loss and the sadness and the grief. You start to feel the seesaw tilt into that direction. And it's also when they have done the very intentional work, and it does have to be intentional work. It doesn't sort of just happen naturally. When they've done that work to reassemble their sense of self again, who am I? Who am I? Not just who I am, seen by my beloved, but it's really about, from the inside out, recreating and assembling enough togetherness in that space of your authentic me. Does that help?
Yeah, and it almost speaks to the importance of, obviously, we don't want to just go around anticipating the death of our partner, but eventually it's going to happen at some point, hopefully later rather than sooner. Yeah. But we talk about it in just a healthy relationship is not getting lost in the relationship and losing your sense of self. Like, obviously there's a lot of beautiful things about being affirmed by your partner and the mirroring and all of that, but that is, two individuals coming together. So you have, you and then myself, and then the relationship is like this third entity. But nurturing all of those, and we tell people all the time, like, you want to improve your relationship, look at yourself first. And obviously this is
totally.
Yeah. And then that really comes to a head when your partner is just ripped away from you, and it's a completely terrible situation. And I'm not even saying this in a way of like, get ready for your partner to die, so, do this. But just to have a healthier relationship in general is to really try to have that awareness, that self-identity, not getting lost in the relationship, not getting lost in the need to have your partner affirm everything that you do or who you are, but intrinsically finding that within. And you'll be all the better if you find yourself in, again, a terrible situation like this. And it's, I'm not speaking to the person that's just lost their, partner. That's just, it's a terrible situation. But I imagine we have listeners that are happily married and listening to this because there's value to be had there, but that you want to be shoring up always that relationship, that self-love with yourself.
Oh, totally. I mean, the A game and being your authentic me doesn't stop once you achieve finding a partner. It's the absolute core foundation of a healthy relationship is to really stay strong in your individuated me, isn't it? You don't collapse into each other, because actually that's one of the key three killers of relationship in my Gottman training is loss of self, negative emotions, and unmet needs. So as soon as you start to really lose your sense of who you are, you're not bringing that into relationship for your beloved to experience and appreciate and affirm. You do have a responsibility to stay as fully expressed and intact in your individualness as possible throughout your lifetime, be that in relationship or not. But it really, really is completely shattered with the death of a spouse, in a very kind of profound way, despite any sense of prior healthy sense of individual or authentic kind of self-expression. It does get incredibly shattered, and that's the work of the surviving spouse is to recreate themselves anew. It's really interesting that you say, Chase, that we don't prepare for a death. We are in a culture that seems to be so death-defying. That natural shock of somebody dying is amplified, I think, in our modern days because we don't believe in death. We have this culture where we extend life and we've got incredible health and medicine. And so when a death occurs, even a natural one at the end of a long life, it's still met with an enormous amount of shock in our society. And I was thinking when I was in preparation for speaking with you guys this morning, even when I'm being a celebrant, so in Australia I'm a marriage celebrant, I think you call them officiants over where you are. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right.
I actually marry people as well. So I do the ceremony and do their legals and help them put their vows together. And it's an interesting observation that, a long time ago, the traditional vows would almost always have that last line, till death do us part. Do you remember that? That used to be in marriage vows. It might still be in some more traditional ones these days. But, not in my experience. Most people, if they're doing traditional vows, they'll take that one out. They'll take that line out. And it's not mentioned at all. There's just no consideration of death being a part of life as it used to be, many, many years ago. It's a real aberration. But you're right, Chase. We all die. We will all die. And so I think it's a worthy discussion for couples and couples in marriage to kind of have at some point in time a conversation about, their eventual death and planning around end of life, to talk about these things. And talking about it doesn't make it happen. It's just having some plans. I have the fortunate or unfortunate scenario where this is very much part of my working world, and my darling beloved husband has these conversations with me all the time, probably too many for his comfort. But we do talk about it. We talk about what would happen in the advent of our death, how we would cope, what we would do. I know what my funeral looks like. Andrew knows what I'm going to do for his. And we've talked about if something was to happen really unexpectedly and early in our love journey and one of us was to pass away, about giving each other permission to lean into love and life again and repartner and be happy. And I think they're I think that's a really good and healthy conversation for couples to explore.
It is an unfortunate, but it is the reality of life, and not talking about it doesn't make it any less real. And it's kind of like a lot of things that we talk about on the show is like, that's not the solution. You want a better relationship. You want to be more intimate. It's not to ignore the issue or the problem. And so that is an exercise that our listeners and Sarah and I and people with a partner right now can do, is talk about these things. You don't have to do it all the time. It could be one time, and
not like Andrew and I. We're probably talk about death too much in my working life. But I agree, Chase. It's just so responsible. It's so sensible, and in fact, just a little dip into this conversation every now and then with each other. That's the paradox of death. It's very life affirming, isn't it? And being just, every now and then reminded of our mortality, I think is an invitation for us to take life deeper, to take love deeper, to not to not dismiss a moment of beauty and connection and intimacy you can have with someone, to eke out every opportunity to express in love and express in life.
Exactly. Yeah. As Sarah likes to say, YOLO. She doesn't say that much.
I don't say it that much
at all, really. But I am joking, of course, but it is so true. And it's something that we've mentioned on the show with past guests is like, you're having a fight with your partner. Like, look at the macro. Look at how ridiculous it is that you're arguing about something that doesn't matter. And you want to examine, where the argument's coming from, and there's all that, but that we are on a rock floating through space, and that's pretty cool. And one day we won't be here. So just having that bigger perspective is super valuable. And you have certainly given Sarah and I and our listeners, hopefully, some amazing tools to apply to their lives. If this is affecting our listener right now, we really feel for you, and hopefully this has helped you. And if you are with a current partner, I think there is a lot of value in the things talked about here today. So why don't we wrap up by having you tell our listeners where they can find you online, and then we'll say goodbye.
Oh, thank you, Chase. Thank you, Sarah. Well, you can find me at saratolmie.com.au. I'm here in the sunny southern hemisphere, currently in a heat wave in Australia. I have a couple of courses people might be interested in. I've got my Creating a Miracle Marriage course, and I've got my new one coming out in February, which is I Am Ready for Love, which is my love and relationship readiness course. So that might be something that someone listening today who feels that they're ready to lean into life and love again might help them. And I just really appreciate the time to speak with you both and share this aspect of what I do with your listeners. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you so much for joining us. And as always, our listeners can find all the links to your website and your courses on your show notes page on our website at idopodcast.com. And thank you so much for joining us.
My pleasure. Much love to you all.
Hi, guys. We hope you enjoyed today's episode. As always, all the links are in the show notes page as well as on the podcast description. And while you're on our website, we encourage you guys to check out our 14-day Happy Couple Challenge. We send you an email for 14 days with simple, doable challenges to help strengthen and improve your relationship. And on our website, we also have a bunch of free resources for your relationship. So we encourage you to check those out. We also have our Love Tribe on Facebook. We encourage you guys to join the tribe and be there for support for each other. If you have questions or just need some relationship advice, we are all here for each other. The group has grown to almost 1,000 people, and we love it. So we hope you guys join that. You can go to Facebook, Love Tribe Fam, and you'll find us right there. And if you are interested in learning more about our flagship course, Spark My Relationship, we hope you guys check it out. We have a special offer that is only for podcast listeners. So you can go to sparkmyrelationship.com/unlock, and you can unlock that special offer and learn more. As always, thank you guys so much, and we'll see you next week.